Let's code. First live coding session, test to learn Go language. We'll create a template function in main. Let's do it for a function checking availability of an HTTP service or API. Let's write a test for its basic desired response of available service. We'll call the functionality as httpStatus for now. It's a fake failing return for now to allow structure the test, first followed with finishing the core logic of functionality. We can run Go tests like this. It fails for now by design. We'll move ahead by writing core logic for HTTP GET call to be made to provide service URL. In case of an error, it needs to return an available service as bool value false. True shall be only returned if HTTP response status code is in 200 or 300 series. Response.status returns status string, not int, as we see in this error. We can access just int code, but for now, let's see how we can extract the int code from the status string that we have. Since it returns an error as well, we are handling two errors now. This errors out saying not enough arguments to pass int. It needs space and bit size as two more params, which are 10 and 64 respectively in our case. See, it's still failing. We'll now add some logs for more verbosity, into which error handled here, which is not just important for testing, but most of our actual running apps to have proper logging done from at all important phrases. Now we see it's failing since status string is not just code but also some text. We'll see how we can split a string and fetch portion of it. Let's run it again. It passes. Cool. Let's update tests some more for better test data. We'll extract out service URLs to constants, add one for valid and another for invalid. Run the tests again. Bool value can be used directly instead of condition for if as a. Let's provide a list of valid and invalid services so tests can run on a variety of inputs. We'll use for loop to iterate through these lists using range, which maps key and value to LHS attributes. We see it fails saying literal is not a constant. Since these are lists, we are trying to consent. We'll have to make them aware. Fails again saying LHS attribute is type int. Now see, we just have one variable which then maps to key. So we'll introduce placeholder variable for key. So the value gets assigned correctly. Runs correctly after fixing the typo. Let's introduce HTTP test package used to handle HTTP requests internally for purpose of testing with mocked response. As of now, these are important on external services for that. We create a new server, pass it an HTTP handler func, which is responsible to manage the mocked response behavior. We'll defer the closing of the server. This keyword defer allows stacking operations to be performed when control is to be returned from current function. To utilize this testing model, we'll need to have control on creation of HTTP client and pass that to our core functionality. As we can switch that past HTTP client to use HTTP tests mock client for purpose of test, and any real HTTP client with any configuration from core program. We'll create a struct service with two attributes, client for HTTP client and URL for service URL. Let's implement the struct now. We can have the httpStatus function as a method for service called available. Let's update main for using this struct as well. We'll make main check for local service running at port 9090. We'll need to update service URLs and test server will provide base URL. Let's update tests to be able to create a test server. Desired status code success and failure. We'll update valid and invalid services for paths acting as extension to base URL given by test servers. These don't matter much in our case since our mock behavior doesn't consider paths. We'll just use two servers instead of putting in paths extraction and matching logic for bloated new test server, which will be digressing from the main purpose that we have here. Let's fix the return status code for invalid server. Now we could have sent direct 200 and 400, but it's just more readable this way, using these constants for status code from HTTP package. Available method now doesn't require a param. Also, let's bring in client creation loop so we can utilize the paths from list to have different service URLs. We can actually just move to single path now, as path is of no significance. We will keep it for now and see one way of doing string concatenation. There's something buggy here, that's why my HTTP test package is not auto-imported. I'll just try quick fix it for run so I can look at the error string and have a quick idea of what's wrong. Since I have a new line for passing params to new server here, each param, even if single, needs a comma at the end. I have a leftover variable from refactoring called service URL. Let's find and fix it. Another leftover is println. We need printf for string to be formatted and printed. It passes. Let's rename the test for its current intended target. Now check if main runs by itself. Says false for no local service at 9090. Now we'll run one and it shall say true. Now that it works, let's add a benchmark suite for the same functionality. Testing.b here is passed to test function. Where b.n gets tweaked for timing to be reliable by itself. We'll pull in the client creation blocks from above as of now. Copy paste does leave leftovers. Let's find out occurrences reason for URL path and fix it. -bench allows sequential run. Dot here runs all benchmark tests as matches for all the rejects. Can specify benchmark run count using -count flag. There are multiple two-main open file calls. We can do away with one client call here to check. Let's call the for closing of response body to ensure no unwanted leaks happen by mistake. Let's split benchmark test for available and unavailable flows as well for independent results. Split logic flow tests as well. Now we see log output here during our tests being run, which make test outputs unreadable. So let's fix that. Now init is a function that auto runs for the package before anything else in it runs. We'll make it discard the output buffer content instead of it being processed at stdout. Test output is clean now. Let's clean up status code inference. Now that we have seen a glimpse of strconv utility, we'll just use the status code and int value directly available at response instance. Let's introduce you to creating or extracting the package. We'll create a package called health. Make sure the first line mentions the package name that we want. Extract out our service health to it. We'll move tests as well for the block. Remember to have tests filed named correctly with _test.go. Since function available starts with lowercase a, it's not public outside the package boundaries. I have been running it wrong as well. Let's use regex after bench and go path to test them later. Let's take a look at all failures. They are for leftover small case calls for available from within tests. Let's fix that. This package works now. We'll call it in main for the general feature to work. Can call new function is localhost 1990 available for complete block. Or just is URL available for any past URLs availability, which looks much better. Let's add new test for the updated main column. Now our function call to be tested prints the result to standard output. Code does let us do capture those streams and test, but that will be another logical block not required for actual logic to be tested. And digressing, so we'll return our output string from is URL available for now and test that. Doesn't need to be public function in here. Let's just return available and failed from our new function and formulate console outputs where it's called, since REST message is common. We'll pass its service struct. Let's introduce interface implementation in Go, to which if a struct others can be used as. So if we implement the generic service interface, we can have mock structs in our is URL available test, which don't rely on other packages for the test of its own. Our interface generic service for now just requires available function to be implemented, which service struct does. We'll implement mock structs for it now. One can return available result and the other can be for unavailable. What this also allows is later implementing is URL available for, say, a gRPC service, where tests for is URL available or the function def doesn't need to change in itself. The new struct for it can just adhere to generic service implementation. Let's run the tests. URL is not there, but the service struct has URL. Fails for fields as generic service is used now, an interface. So let's add an info function for interface to get details. For now, a string of URL will do. We'll have to implement it for service struct and mock structs as well. Now test run without panic. All the one fails. I need to match for right return value and update returns for is URL available as discussed earlier. Available string return for true, fail for false. These pass let's benchmark. Let's run all tests. There are in this path. We are good for this session. We'll update it later.